This is Audible.
Audible Studios presents Lead Yourself First, Inspiring Leadership Through Solitude. Written by Raymond M. Kethledge and Michael S. Irwin. Performed by Michael Quinlan.
A note about structure. This book is based on the experience of leaders, some contemporary, some historical, who have used solitude to function more effectively as leaders. Our research has been qualitative. Rather than gather large masses of data, say from survey results, and then look for patterns within that data, we have gathered the stories of individual leaders and looked for patterns within those. Qualitative research takes longer than quantitative research, in our case, about 5 years. But our research has revealed patterns nonetheless. Some of those patterns concern the different purposes for which leaders use solitude. Broadly stated, to find clarity, creativity, emotional balance, and moral courage. Other patterns concern the different ways in which leaders find solitude and the obstacles they face in finding it. Our research began, in a sense, with our own experiences. Although Mike is a strong extrovert and Ray a strong introvert, both of us have sought out solitude throughout our adult lives. As a first lieutenant in Iraq during 2004, Mike chose to walk rather than ride each day to the chow hall, a mile each way, twice a day, in temperatures approaching 100 degrees. In those days, Mike had a dozen soldiers reporting to him on a base repeatedly attacked by mortar and rocket fire. Sometimes, on those walks, Mike gathered his thoughts about some problem then facing him. Other times, he steadied himself emotionally. Years later, during the solitude of long runs, Mike developed the idea for a new nonprofit to support veterans returning home from deployment overseas. Now known as Team Red, White, and Blue, the nonprofit benefits more than 100,000 veterans. Ray found solitude as a law student during solo camping trips in the forests of northern Michigan, fishing in the streams there. As a law clerk to Justice Anthony Kennedy, Ray walked alone around the Capitol and the Supreme Court building when thinking through a case. Now, as a federal judge, Ray heads up to his barn office looking out on northern Lake Huron without any internet connection when writing opinions in difficult cases. With the exception of one story about Mike, however, this book is based on the stories of other leaders. We define leadership broadly to include running a large corporation with thousands of employees, or leading a handful of employees on a single team, or leading a single family member through crisis or growth. Anyone who leads anyone, including oneself, can benefit from solitude. About half the book is based on interview material from contemporary leaders, some of them famous, but more of them people like the readers of this book. Other chapters illustrate the experiences of prominent leaders throughout history. Eisenhower in the days before D-Day, Aung San Suu Kyi during her years of house arrest in Burma, Martin Luther King Jr. during the Montgomery bus boycott, to name a few. Each of those chapters tells a discrete story about how the leader used solitude to be more effective. In some of these stories, the leader used solitude as a regular practice, as Eisenhower did when he wrote memoranda to himself during World War II. Other stories show how a leader used solitude in a particular instance, as Martin Luther King did at his kitchen table one night in January 1956. But all of these stories are stories rather than snapshots, and thus each of them involves a discussion not only of solitude itself, but also of the broader circumstances, the time, the setting, the difficulties in which the leader found himself or herself. Taken as a whole, however, each of those chapters provides an illustration of the timeless importance of solitude to effective leadership. The book is divided into 4 parts, each of them focusing upon a particular quality: clarity, creativity, emotional balance, and moral courage that solitude enhances. Our discussion of interview material tracks those boundaries, and for the most part, the historical chapters do as well. But sometimes a historical story that primarily illustrates one quality also touches upon another. Eisenhower's story is about clarity, for example, but to a lesser extent shows how he used solitude to maintain his emotional balance. We keep those stories intact rather than separate the different parts of the story into different parts of the book. What our contemporary and historical research has shown above all, however, is that personal leadership,